What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to D+Pad Life, and today I want to talk about Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Now, if you're a fan of the Resident Evil series and it's your first time checking out the channel, be sure you subscribe. I'm talking about all the Resident Evil games for the next few weeks here. And I've already covered Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 on the PlayStation 1, but now we're going to jump right into Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, man. This game rules. I am a huge fan of Resident Evil 3. So, with that being said, similarly in the last few videos, I would talk about my little story time with the game on how I first got introduced to it, a little bit about what I liked about the game, what I dislike, and just kind of share, man, and jump into it. So let's do that today. So for starters, I first got introduced to Resident Evil 3 with a neighbor friend of mine who I mentioned in the last video. We rented the game, I believe, from like a Blockbuster, and we had a good time with it, man. It was definitely challenging. This one for us was a bit more of a learning curve, I think, than even Resident Evil 2 was. This one is just high action, man. Like a very busy game, a very active game. One of the things that I really appreciate about this one is the added mechanic of like the 180 turn, the real time going up and down ladders that this game added, or ladders, sorry, stairs, how you can actually actively control your progression and regression up and down stairs. We always thought that was really cool. I know I did, especially after the other games only had you going up straight in a line. Like if you clicked on those stairs, that was awesome. They went straight up and straight down. But with this one, yeah, you had like this free flowing system. So I always thought that was really cool. Getting to play with him was an interesting time because that wasn't the era where you could just easily get a guide. I mean, back then, player's guides were a real thing. If you wanted to figure a game out, you had to get a player's guide. So we really just had to fight our way through it and struggle through it and just, man, make it work. And then eventually Christmas came along, and this was a game I requested and that I got, and I beat it in one sitting. I sat down and I played this game from start to finish and had an absolute blast. I hadn't ever gotten that far during that rental with that one friend of mine. In fact, I believe we didn't even get outside of the initial city at first. Like, you know how you eventually get to the clock tower? I don't even think we made it to there. So a lot of it was brand new for me and just having to figure it out. Oh, right there, what you just saw was a dodge mechanic that they added. I mean, when I say this game added action, you could dodge, you can 180 turn, you can control yourself up and down steps, which we actually just got an example of her going down those steps earlier. Again, a really great arsenal of weapons. You know, you've got the pistol, you've got two different pistols, two different shotguns, an assault rifle, the knife. You get a grenade launcher with 4, not just 3, but 4 different types of ammo. You get a mine thrower, rocket launcher eventually, and a magnum. I think that might be it. There might even be more weapons than that, but I think that's it. And then, you know, it's the introduction of this villain here, Nemesis. Now, the second game introduced the stalker enemy type of mechanic, and 3 just took that and ran with it, man. Nemesis is incredibly cool. He is scripted in a way similar to how the last Stalker was in Resident Evil 2, but he handles a little differently too. So, oh, that was awesome. She shot the dog in the air. See, look at those dodges. But with this one, there's a bunch of different ways that Nemesis can show up. So depending on the path you take in the areas that you're in will determine like when and where Nemesis will show up, and sometimes even how he will show up. And what I mean by that is like, will he have a weapon? Will he not have a weapon? Which type of weapon will he have? Actually, you know what? I'm thinking of the remake when it comes to which type of weapon he'll have. And this one, he just has the rocket launcher right there. But this story is really good too, man. It progresses at a great pace. There's only the one plot point that you need to follow. There's no like multiple character choices. There's no multiple scenarios. You've got the one storyline to play through, but the game just keeps such a good pace, even though it's a linear experience for the most part, and it's action packed. The game keeps a great pace, man. You know, like it really does feel like a full-fledged adventure, but simultaneously, you can come back to it time and time again. And one of the cool things they added to this one too is every time you beat the game on hard mode, you unlock an epilogue for one of the characters throughout the entire series. I believe there's 8 epilogues you can unlock. There might be 9. I think there's 8. And it covers Chris, Jill, Barry, Leon, Claire. I think Sherry got her own. Ada and Hunk, which is the Umbrella operative that survived in Resident Evil 2. I mentioned that he got his own little like mini game, so to speak, his little own scenario in Resident Evil 2. You actually get to unlock an epilogue for him as well and figure out what's going on with that character. And I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, that really deeply motivated me to beat this game again and again and again. Something I failed to mention about Resident Evil 2 and even Resident Evil 1 that this game has as well is multiple costumes. So you can unlock a bunch of different costumes in this game. I think there's like 5 or 6 alternate costumes you can unlock. And Resident Evil 2 has that, and Resident Evil 1 has that. It's a little less of a thing in Resident Evil 1. I think there's only like 1 alternative costume for each person. In Resident Evil 2, I think Leon has 2 and Claire has 1. So it's not that big of a deal, but it's still cool to have, right? Nemesis has gone on to be one of the most iconic figures in the entire series, and there's a reason why. His execution in this game is incredible. Mechanically, it's just great. I also love the co-star in this game, Carlos Oliveira, and the whole plot point with the Umbrella mercenary force. I think that was really cool, right? To see like one of the good guys having to match up with one of the bad guys and having to work together in order to survive what has ultimately happened to Raccoon City. And that's the thing. This game's timeline coincides with Resident Evil 2. It takes place slightly before Resident Evil 2, during Resident Evil 2, and slightly after Resident Evil 2. And that's a really neat touch. And everything after this game, you know, up until now when we're getting Resident Evil 9, Raccoon City has not had its own focus since then. I mean, there was spin-offs like Outbreak 1 and 2, which also took place in Raccoon City, but we're not discussing those in this series here. This is all about the main storyline entries, other than maybe like Revelations 1 and 2. I'll count those because they do take place. They do have like a specific point in the timeline. They are canon, and they do make sense with what's going on. And plus, I haven't played much of the Outbreak games, but I've played both the Revelation games, and I absolutely adore them. So yes, we're going to cover those because it's my channel. I can do whatever I want. What about what I didn't like about Resident Evil 3? Well, one thing, before we get into that, one thing that's also great about this game, similarly to 2 and 1, is the soundtrack. Resident Evil 3 has an incredible soundtrack. I highly, highly love the soundtrack in this one. I think it takes what the second one did. It's got a similar vibe, but it puts a nice twist on it, and they both stand out as their both own individual strong soundtracks. But as far as things that Resident Evil 3 did that I didn't like, what can I think of with this? More Carlos. I love Carlos in this game. I think he's a great character. I would have loved more time to get to play as him. Maybe instead of just the one time in the game lets you play as him, maybe there could be 2 times. That could have been pretty cool. Or honestly, just a whole separate scenario where I get to play as Carlos from start to finish. That would be really neat. I'd like to see what he was up to and the types of things he saw and the types of fights he took on. But I'm not mad at what they did with this. I think ultimately they made a really, really great, spectacular game here. Again, it does continue, as you can tell, like the preset camera angles, the pre-rendered backgrounds, as well as tank controls. This is the third entry in this series to keep all of those, I'll just call them mechanics. I'll say aspects of the game. still intact. They were still doing those things that just became such a staple of the franchise, right? Like something that when you go into these games, you know to anticipate those things. But it was actually from this point forward where we would start to see a shift from that. And I'll get into that when we talk about Code Veronica, because that was a major shift for the series, as well as just a major milestone for the series too. It's like, wow, we're actually on strong enough hardware now that pre-rendered backgrounds don't have to be a thing. So that'll be fun to dig into. They also had a Mercenaries mode. This is the first formal appearance of Mercenaries mode in this game, where you could play as Carlos or Umbrella Operative members Nikolai or Mikhail. And you go around Raccoon City saving survivors, taking out enemies, trying to reach a specific destination. And it's a really great mode, man. And you can unlock awesome stuff like unlimited ammo rocket launchers, Gatling guns, assault rifles, unlimited ammo for every weapon. Or you might just get a case that you can apply on a weapon. I think that's how it works. But in any case, a really fun mode that I've deeply enjoyed throughout the years. But that is actually the only mode you unlock. What's interesting is in the second game, you can unlock, alternate scenarios for Leon and Claire. You can unlock the Hunk and Tofu scenarios. You can unlock EX battle mode. There's a lot of extra content in 2 to keep you coming back. All of this one really does have is Mercenaries mode and the main campaign and unlocking those epilogues. And I mean, if you're the type of person who's kind of like, I beat the game, one and done. I mean, it does have 2 different endings. They're not that drastically different. There's a significant difference in them, but ultimately the result is the same. Other than that, if you're not like loving the game and enjoying playing it over and over again and unlocking those epilogues, there's really not a whole lot to motivate you to keep coming back, other than the fact that, well, you know what? The choose your own adventures. I can't believe I can't believe I didn't touch down on that. That's like the biggest aspect of this game. Holy cow. So yeah, you'll run into different situations where it's like, do I want to do this or that? And generally there's a timer, like there's something happening that's pressing you to make up this decision. And it happens several times in this game. And sometimes it'll lead you to progress in a totally different way than the other option would. Like, oh, I chose this one, and now I'm entering this next stage from this angle instead of that angle. And now the enemies are laid out in this way or that way. And that's another thing too. Like a lot of the rooms you get into in this game, they seem random, but there's probably something you can do to purposely trigger rooms to have enemies in them that you want. But like multiple rooms have different types of options for enemy types and layouts that'll appear. I can think of one hallway where sometimes it's zombies, sometimes it's dogs, and you don't really know which one you're going to get until you play it. So that like swap can make multiple playthroughs really entertaining and really fun. And that's something that never returned to the franchise after this, which is a real shame, because it is something that makes this one super unique and really gives it a really good appeal. Like it's something that makes this one really special. So one of the things I've said in a past video is that Resident Evil 1 is my favorite Resident Evil. I absolutely adore it. There's not one that speaks to me better than that one, but I think this is the best Resident Evil. I think it does so much of what 1 and 2 did well, and it adds so much to the series while still keeping it faithful to the tank controls and the preset camera angles and the pre-rendered backgrounds. I just think this is such a strong entry, and it is, in my opinion, if it's not the best Resident Evil, actually, you know what? Let me rephrase that, because I actually misspoke. Resident Evil 1 is my favorite. Resident Evil 2 is the best. Not necessarily to me, but I think if I had to like score it overall. And then Resident Evil 3 is the most fun. That is how I would lay it out. 1 favorite, 2 the best, 3 the most fun. I think Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is a blast with the alternate enemy types and layouts you can run into, the multiple choices, the really fun arsenal, the way you have so much control over Jill, more control than you've been given in any entry up to this point. I think Resident Evil 3 stands up hands down as the most fun entry in the entire series. But speaking of fun, man, if you enjoyed this discussion and enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video. It goes a long way in supporting the channel. I know you've heard that time and time again from other YouTubers, but it's true, man, especially for a small channel like my own. It really helps promote my video in the algorithm and help invite more people over to check out the content. But if you also enjoy just hanging out today, man, please consider subscribing. We're a nice little humble channel. We're on the road to 100 subscribers. And we're growing at a nice steady pace, so I appreciate the support there. I upload about 2 to 3 videos a week, so regular content coming out, and definitely going to be covering more Resident Evil in the future, not just in these discussion videos. I've got some other ideas as well, so appreciate you guys for hanging out. I'll catch you in the next one. We'll be talking about the remakes of Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3.